Metcash as the stock of the day. Why? Well, it reported today, of course, an over 1% rise in first half group revenue to $7.8 billion. Underlying earnings, however, were lower after an increase in corporate costs in its hardware division more than offset earnings growth in its food and liquor divisions. Looking ahead, Metcash says that it expects to deliver between $14 and $16 million in annual savings from its cost optimization program in the second half. It will pay a fully franked interim dividend of 11 cents per share. All right, I'm going to start with you on this one, Mathan. Metcash, it's done well, and sales are looking pretty solid to start this half.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it just comes down to where your growth is coming, and it was the whole supermarket sector was a market darling, and it made sense because in an inflationary cycle, they all pass it on. They're good at you have no choice. I actually got a couple of relatives of mine down from Germany, and they were singing the praises of Aldi.
Oh yeah.
I was telling them, without Aldi, we probably get squeezed even more. Mm-hmm. But look, I think the sector was good, but of course when inflation comes off, it's harder for them to keep the margin. So it made sense. Woolies was the preferred one. We were in it. It ran too hard. We got out, and when you got Woolies being thrown as a stock pick by most people, that's generally a bad idea. So that's when we got out, and things have underperformed a bit, which is logical with inflation coming off. Consumer spending cycle, we all expected it to slow down. It's taken longer, which is amazing how much credit that consumers have been able to get access globally, even in a tightening cycle. But I think that'll eventually bite. So in that context, everyone's worried, and it makes sense. So I'm not jumping in to pick the bottom here. Metcash is doing okay. I don't think they're struggling, but I think the overall cycle is tough. Mm-hmm. I still think Woolies is the best of the lot, but I'm not buying Woolies here, so I'm definitely not buying Metcash.
Okay, if you had Metcash, would you hold it though?
I think it's okay. Yeah, I think okay. If you're there, you've taken the hit. I think downside risk is a bit, but I don't think there's a lot of downside risk. I think overall it's not going to go bust. You can ride through the cycle. Okay,
there you go. It's a hold for Metcash. For Mathan Somasundaram, Woolworths best of the bunch. Boy, Howard, I remember years ago you telling me to buy Woolworths and just put it in the bottom drawer and never think of it again. You still think that?
Well, look, I mean, it's one that was never going to be a capital killer. You were never going to lose any money on it. But food and groceries and the sort of things they sell are not going to grow that rapidly either. So it's the kind of safe thing you can put in the bottom drawer, forget about. But you're not going to get rich out of either. Like Mathan, I mean, the sector should do well in an inflationary environment, but their results looked so positive. If you read it, the words used in their report to the market was so positive, but the numbers aren't all that positive. They've grown 1 or 2%. Well, inflation's been more than that, so they haven't even kept up with inflation. Their profits are down, and the way they're going to solve that is by cutting costs out of the business. Well, why'd they have the costs in the first place in the business if they were running it well? So, you don't get a pat on the back for removing costs you shouldn't have had. So I certainly didn't get enthused about it when I read it this morning, but it was okay. And that's about all you can say. And if inflation does continue, which I expect it will, not necessarily at sky-high rates, but no time in history has inflation proved that transitory, that it came and went in such a short period of time. It just doesn't happen. And we always talk about it's going to. I mean, every time in history it was always going to be transitory, but it never was. You can't do too wrong in being in one of these in the space, but I also still prefer Woolworths to Metcash, although Metcash is on a PE of only 11, so it's actually pretty cheap compared to the other two. But in the longer term, I'd rather be with a better company.
Okay, I'm going to call that a hold from both of you guys, but both of you prefer Woolworths in that space.
Sure.